Hello everyone, and welcome to the Helioscope PDX channel, where we share our comic book knowledge with you through interviews and tutorials. I'm Layla Del Duca, and today I am talking with Ron Randall, who has a new Kickstarter campaign for his book Trekker: Hunter's Moon. There is a link in the description below if you would like to contribute to that campaign. Ron has been working in comics for decades. He's a true comic book veteran, and I had a lot of fun picking his brain about career highlights, his passion project Trekker, and how he has managed to do so many successful Kickstarters over the years. At any time during this video, please feel free to hit subscribe and the bell icon to get notifications. Otherwise, here is the interview. Hi Ron, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me. It's always great to chat.
Yeah, likewise. I miss you.
I miss you too.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to get right into the questions. So you've been making comics for decades, since the 80s. But what are some of your career highlights from your whole career time?
Oh boy. Well, I'll try to just hit a few of them. Like you said, I've been doing it a long time. So I've got a pretty long list of highlights and a decent list of lowlights too, but we don't need to go into those. But my highlights really started to sort of crack out of the box. Even before my actual career started, what jump-started was going to the Joe Kubert School. And I was in the second class of kids attending that, so the school is still figuring out how to be a school and stuff. But it was a thrill for lots of reasons. My classmates and a few of the guys that were in the class above me, the first-year students, were just a wonderful group of people. They've some of my best friends and, definitely kindred spirits. And they included people who have gone on to sort of become legends. Steve Bissett and Rick Veitch and John Tollivan and Tom Yates. Those were contemporaries of mine, I guess, my classmates and schoolmates. Tom Mandrake and Jan Duursema, who became two of my best friends in my years in New Jersey, both went on to have pretty stellar careers. Tim Truman, who created Grimjack and Scout and things like that. So my comrades, my classmates, became a huge support system, a great nucleus of wonderful friends to help us all survive our years of starving as young kids lost in the middle of New Jersey. And of course, a real highlight of that was getting to work with Joe himself, both as a teacher at the school, and then when we graduated, Joe sort of handpicked some of us, the more promising guys from this and gals from the school to draw very, very short 3, 4, 5-page stories in the back of the comic he was editing at the time, Sergeant Rock, a character he'd co-created. And that was really like a one-on-one mentor-student sort of deal, because Joe would hand me like a very short script. I would take it home and work on my thumbnails, call Joe up, and arrange to go over to Joe's house and climb the stairs outside his garage to his above garage studio and sit at the drawing board right next to Joe Kubert while he went over step by step everything that I had done and explained his thinking about how he would have approached it, and often doodle 3 or 4 different solutions for a panel composition or a way to draw a figure or have the shadows fall in a scene. All this, it was like getting to crawl inside of Joe's head and listen to his thought process about how he approached pages. And obviously that's just an inexpressible privilege to be able to, an opportunity to do that. And it infused in me this passion for storytelling, because that's what Joe was all about. He was a wonderful draftsman and a great human being too. But what drove Joe was he would get a script and he would just dive into it and put all the blood and guts and passion into making that story vividly alive on the comics page. So that kicked my career off to a pretty good start as far as giving me values that have stuck with me and served me pretty well the whole time. Yeah, and then really quickly then, since I took long on this and I probably should have, but early on in my career, the first regular gig I had in comics after doing some of these backups was a thing called The Barren Earth, which is in a lot of ways set the template for what I have later come on to do with Trekker. It's a science fiction series, had a strong female lead character, but this was written by a guy who then became a really good friend of mine, Gary Cohn, who co-created the Blue Devil and other stuff at DC back in the 80s. This thing was very much more like Edgar Rice Burroughs crossed with Frank Herbert's Dune sort of thing. The world was a desert planet, and there were characters riding around on giant lizards and battling fungal creatures that were in the subterranean, still moist parts of the planet. So it was really high-blown sci-fi fantasy stuff. But I loved it. It was right in my wheelhouse, all the stuff that I'd loved as a kid. Gary and I found a way to filter into that, so that was great. I got to work on Swamp Thing back when Steve Bissett and John Taliban were working with Alan Moore creating comics history. And I was just sort of pulled into to pinch in and help out on the art chores here and there. A few pages of pencils that I'd help Steve out with one issue, a few pages that I'd ink with John on another issue. But I was there to see some of that being created. That was great fun. I had runs on Justice League comics. I got to work briefly with like Gail Simone on Wonder Woman. I got to draw a Star Wars miniseries at Dark Horse. I got to work on Star Trek back when Marvel had the rights for that. So been a lot of fun over the years. And then of course the real highlights were getting a chance to create Trekker at Dark Horse back when Dark Horse was first starting out in the 80s. And then in the last few years, being able to take all of it into my hands by self-publishing the new ongoing stories of Trekker through Kickstarter, which has led to the times that have been the most fulfilling and most exhausting and most rewarding times of my entire career. So that's kind of a quick overview, I guess.
Dang, that is so many awesome things you just listed off right there. I'm truly happy for you. That's so cool.
When I look back on it, I mean, I'm not saying that I didn't apply myself and really took the job pretty damn seriously, but I mean, a lot of it is just being in the right place at the right time, recognizing and being open to possibilities and opportunities when they're there in front of you. And a lot of it was just, being too stubborn to quit because there were really discouraging times too. I got into the business right at what was then called, at the beginning of the 80s, they had this thing that was called the DC implosion. And for a lot of market reasons, sales were just dropping across the board.
Huh.
And there was a big meeting of all the editorial staff at DC. They had a long list of all the freelancers they were working with, and they drew a red line. My name was on the wrong side of that line. So all of a sudden, the beginning of my career, which is sort of, cut off
Whoa.
at the head. Yeah. So that was kind of brutal. I was in the same boat as a lot of those classmates of mine that I was talking about. Every single one of us, our response to that was to keep working on samples, keep calling up editors and making appointments and going in there and getting other portfolio reviews and just keeping at it. We just, and eventually, the ice began to thaw a little bit, and one of us got a little job and helped spread the words for the other ones around there, and it opened up. But those sort of discouraging downturns just happen. At least they have for me. At first, it might have sounded, when I was describing all the highlights, like I just sort of stepped on the escalator and just drove me on up the hill. Well, looking back on it, I remember all those fun times the most and the highlights. But I don't want to discount for anybody that it's a roller coaster ride.
So Trekker has also been around for decades. You said just since the 80s, right? What's your elevator pitch for the series?
Oh, I'm terrible at elevator pitches. But the quickest way to boil it down is it's a science fiction series about a young woman who is gifted and has a complicated history that is a bounty hunter. The other way I describe it is it's a long form sort of coming of age story, a story of self-discovery that I disguise as a series of action-packed, self-contained science fiction adventures. So, the little kid in me loves, spaceships that crash land on the swamp planets, and starliners and sci-fi noir shootouts. And so I put all that stuff into Trekker, but what threads all the stories together is Mercy St. Clair, the hero of the thing, as she gradually evolves as a character and as a human being over time. So I try to have a series that works on lots of different levels. It's my series where I just try to do everything, where I try to do all the stuff I like the most about being a storyteller.
Today, the day I'm releasing this video, is the day that your next Kickstarter has launched. Can you tell us what we can, what this next installment of Mercy's story is about? Like
every Trekker story, some of those ingredients I talked about, I hope it has for readers a lot of what they hope to come to expect in Trekker. A lot of sort of that swashbuckling action and adventure and passion, and another step in Mercy's personal evolution happens. So a lot of those familiar ingredients. But the thing I love about the series, one of the things that I've come to really value the most about it is because of the overall concept of the series. She's a trekker. She treks. She travels a lot. So there's great chance to have different story settings, different tones of the stories, sometimes even sort of different subgenres of the stories. Like sometimes it is like a sci-fi noir thing. Sometimes it's like a sci-fi Western, like Firefly or something like that. This story is the most primal sort of savage confrontation adventure that Mercy has had yet. And so it's got a lot of a primitivist, sort of like something out of sort of a cross between Predator and Aliens, where it's Mercy versus the monster thing.
Awesome.
A little bit of that suspense of Swamp Thing sort of stuff. So I try to shift the gears so that each story sort of sees things from a slightly different angle and has a different sort of atmosphere and flavor to it, to keep it interesting for the readers, I hope, as well as for me. Because one time I'm telling a story that's set on a blasted battlefield, and Mercy pairs up with a troop of soldiers and gets caught in the crossfires. So it's a war comic, and then she crash lands on a swamp planet and has to fight the alien creatures or whatever. So this one, I think, in a lot of, I'm hoping that this one has the most intense knockdown, drag out, climactic battle of any Trekker book I've done yet. So that's what I'm swinging for here.
You've had many successful Trekker Kickstarters over the years. What are some important elements you've learned that you think others should know when they run their own Kickstarter campaigns?
I guess I'll start with the big picture thing is that doing a Kickstarter, it's a lot of work. There's no way to sugarcoat it. And I think it's like anything else in life, that if you invest in it and take it like it's important, you will get a bigger return out of it. When I was first preparing to launch my campaign, I was picking the brains of people like Carl Kiesel, who'd run the successful campaigns, and he and I went together to hear this one woman talk, who had run some campaigns and even written a book on how to do a Kickstarter campaign that she funded through a Kickstarter. But she said that when you do a Kickstarter, you have to treat it like you're taking on another job, like a part-time job. And I'm saying to myself at the time, I'm busy doing all my comics. I'm just going to have to do a Kickstarter and do a little bit on it here, a little bit on it there, and just see how it goes. And she was right, and I was dead wrong. I mean, I launched the campaign, and not only did something kick in for me, where there's like an adrenaline got going and everything, but I just found out that it just seemed to me that it was really important to be present and respond to backers right away and be visible on social media and stuff, and just treat it like it was a real job. And I would say don't launch your campaign unless you are committed to doing it, and most importantly, do not launch it until you're ready to launch it. When your project or your product or whatever is at a stage you're confident and comfortable with, and you've built the right sort of a campaign, done some research on how much it costs to ship things, you will underestimate how much it costs to ship things, guarantee you. So just doing that sort of homework, it shouldn't be done on a lark or as a hobby. I mean, if you've got anything like a serious goal down in mind. So those are the big picture things. A couple things I've discovered, sort of to my surprise. As I said, I talked to Carl about running a campaign, and Carl had said to me how much he enjoyed running his Kickstarter, and I thought he was nuts, because the thought of running a Kickstarter to me seemed so sort of overwhelming and it's just so much effort and so stressful. I thought it just got to be torture to run a Kickstarter campaign, and it is, or at least it can be stressful and exhausting and all that stuff. But I found out how much fun I was having doing it too. It's exciting to have that direct contact with your backers. It's much more immediate and personal. And I've enjoyed getting to know some of my backers that will then come up to me at a convention. When we have convention, it just increases that sense of connection and community that I have with the people that embrace this character in this world that I created. It's incredibly fulfilling. So yeah, a lot of work. If you do it well, I think it's worth it. At least it has been for me.
As I said before, there's a link to Ron's Kickstarter campaign for Trekker Hunter's Moon in the description below. Science fiction adventure fans, this is the book for you, or for me, because I love science fiction adventures myself. Please subscribe and like this video if you would like to help us grow our online community here. And otherwise, have a great day. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you here next time.